Hello, everyone. This is Chala Dinkoy, CEO and founder of the Repositioning Expert. Welcome back to another live edition of Tuesday Tea Time with me, Chala. And I have my trusty protein drink. It is hot, hot, hot. In Toronto, it's not that hot. Last week, I was in Charlotte and, on a VIP day with a client and Charlotte, North Carolina, and it was a flood. Her office got shut down. We had to find alternate solutions. There were like warning flashes on the highway saying turn around or you'll drown. It was quite the something. And I am back to, and of course the temperatures were crazy hot. And here I'm back to, I don't know what it translates to, but it's pretty cool here in Toronto where I actually needed a sweater in the evening. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but I am back and I'm telling you, this summer has been a busy one. And, of course, it is what you make it, right? Like I have planned and I have made it busy. I've made my downtime, filled it up with online programs, online partnerships. On the 21st, Dr. Carolina Billings and I are doing another turn of the very popular mastermind training that I have that's around pitching to corporations. As you know, everything that I do is around pitching to corporations. Every education that I do, every training that I give, and every speech that I do. And a lot of these topics are around how to get in touch with and to pitch to corporations. So that brings me to the topic of today is where to meet corporate decision makers. And often it is the number one complaint of clients and or prospects that I meet who are saying, Chala, we just don't know where to find them. And we can't reach them through online means. Nobody picks up the phone anymore. Nobody's really working. We're not really sure where they're working, but we can't reach them through saturated online methods or the phone. So we are scrambling on how to make a marketing plan to meet them. So that is until, of course, they start working with me, and then I can take them into the world of a very intentional, focused industry track where they're going to be able to meet the decision makers for their targeted industry. So I've given away the first couple of points of the 7 places where I meet decision makers, corporate decision makers. And to remind you, I used to be a corporate decision maker for 18 years when I worked for Pepsi, Pizza Hut, Frito-Lay. And of course, I knew where my bosses were hanging out. I knew where I was hanging out. And we were always buying services for these large brands and making multi-million-dollar decisions. And they were influenced by the people that we were meeting. Whether we had a global, service of record agency or partner or vendor, we always were influenced by the people that we were meeting on a day-to-day basis because our needs changed on a day-to-day basis. The fundamental industry-related needs didn't change, but how we were dealing with them, new ways of coming up with solutions for them, these all became relevant. What was happening in the market, what was happening globally, these all played into the new solutions that we were looking for and didn't even know in some cases that we were looking for. The opportunities came up because we met these amazing vendors with these amazing solutions and programs. So that's what I want for you, is for you to do the work, the strategic work, to figure out what is the solution that you provide that is unique. How do we make it unique? And then who do we target? And then how do we get into their world so that these inundated and jaded decision makers actually take a notice of you, and it's not just a dry meet and greet, but it actually gets into a meeting and then it closes into a sale. Let me take a step back and go through the 7 places where I meet important high-level corporate decision makers. In fact, I think I'm going to make it 8 because I just thought of another one. So as I mentioned, industry conferences, one of the first things that we do with clients is to get them niched into an industry to focus on for the next 6 to 12 months. And the reason for that is because human beings usually hang out at every level with their industry or interest group. So it could be B2C or B2B. So the example that I always give for a B2B interest group is women in business or minority businesses. There is literally a different procurement conference or a meeting with diverse businesses that is going on somewhere around the world every single day, but for sure in the US of A every single day. I know because that's my super niche. So in terms of industry, these decision makers at every level, and especially the high levels, are present. They have to be present at these conferences. Some of the times they're in smaller rooms and having, small meetings, more targeted meetings. Other times they are presenting. Other times they're asked to be on a panel. But in some way, if there is a big industry meeting or conference for that industry once a year, you can be sure that key decision makers are going to be there, at least like some of the time. They'll maybe fly in and out, but you can be sure that when you're there, you get to meet them. And I know because that's how I made my career, is that I started attending before I was given any ability to speak or to do any executive roundtables, which is what I'll talk about as one of the ways to meet high level decision makers. I just went, I attended, and I networked, and I met people, and I met the organizers, and I, made enough of an impression and had enough of a solution to a very specific, unique problem that they were facing, that they gave me another chance for another meeting, which then turned into me starting to speak and, educate and then convert those audiences into actual paying clients. Industry conferences is the number one for me. Number two is I have seen the effect of in-person versus digital, especially after COVID. COVID, my business almost shut down because the borders shut down. And what amazed me was that I was able to learn how to market online. And I certainly made way higher a revenue than I ever thought possible when I lost every single client, had graduated within a year and I still had to make money. And so I was able to still make something comparable to what I used to make, which was a huge accomplishment and a kind of a miracle, even though it was online. But what I found is there is nothing to compare in person to online. So where can you meet people in person? We already talked about the conferences. But I also am a huge believer in monthly chapter meetings. So the client that I was with in Charlotte, one of the things that we did during her strategy day is to literally look up in-person events that she could actually attend, first as a networker, first as an attendee, and then to approach speaking to them about their industry issues and speaking, on a platform or speaking in a roundtable or one-to-one, one-to-many. But it all starts with in person, because you somehow generate more trust in person, flesh to flesh, than you could any time online. Now, there's something to be said for the continuous presence of people that you meet online over and over and over again. So, for example, when I do my videos daily, I know that there's definitely an uptick in interest in my business, in me, in hiring me and talking to me, because there's a celebrity halo effect. So, and that's the same for any of the influencers. That's the same for anybody who puts out regular content that features their personal knowledge and wisdom and abilities that relates to what they're selling. So there's something to be said for that, for sure, but nothing beats in person. So where to meet corporate decision makers? Anywhere that they would be in person, starting with the industry events and their chapter meetings. I also like chapter meetings because they're regular, right? If you don't see one person at one, you might meet another decision maker at the other. And if you think that your decision maker is way too high in level to attend chapter meetings, you might meet people who work for them. And when they're convinced that you can help solve whatever problem that they're always in a room talking to their bosses about, they're certainly going to bring you in. And that's happened to me over and over again. So number 3 is, I love this, exclusive retreats. I have met so many decision makers, corporate decision makers, really important people who have really changed my life, have changed my business, have changed the way that I view things. The kind of person who either their business, that they themselves invest in these exclusive retreats, or they're at a high enough level that they can get their bosses to get them to invest in them to be at these retreats, are of a different kind. They're interested in investing their time and money in growth and improvement, and whatever it is that they're trying to grow and improve, you can be part of that solution. So these could be anywhere from really high level, like $400 dinners, to away retreats, which I've been to. I've been, carried in limo buses to these retreats. I mean, these are luxury things where people pay the dollars and invest in themselves. And you want to be with people like that, whether at a corporate level or at an entrepreneurial level. Okay, so exclusive retreats is a really good place to meet these high level decision makers. Number 4 is certification networks. So what do I mean by that is if there's a governing body that certifies a business in one way or another, these are they could be considered interest groups. So let me give you an example. Is of course the interest groups of WeBank, which is the Women Business Enterprises, NMSDC, which is the minority businesses. You could be PMPs, which is the I've also spoken a lot in front of project managers. So any kind of certifying body, what that means is the people that are there in those events that are run by these certifying organizations, they've invested in their skill or their business to differentiate themselves or their business, and they've invested for growth and development. So they are going to be the kind of people who would hire someone like you to improve whatever industry problem it is that they're struggling with. So I want to tell you that I've met a lot of my clients through, in fact, I just now niche down in the minority and the women, but I have previously met through certification networks like the coaches certification, the PMPs, the project manager certifications. It's just a really good culmination of all the kinds of people who are willing to grow and invest in themselves and their business. Okay, another one. So do you see the thread here? Is the theme is that people are willing to invest, right? Whether their company is investing in them or they're investing in themselves. These are higher level thinkers. These are people who want to get better and they don't mind paying for it. And this is the best place to meet high level decision makers, because that's the reason why they're so high level, is because at some point in time they started investing in themselves and that's had a positive effect. So they just continue to do that. Number 5 is CEO groups. This is a great one. And I've included mastermind groups in there. So the CEO groups are just ones that are just focused on like gathering together CEOs and having a peer group sharing and a peer counseling and advisory kind of board. And I gave some examples of EO, YPO, WPO, which is the women's one, Vistage. And with respect to masterminds, so like I used to be I've been a part of many masterminds, but mastermind groups are specific. And most of the time they're offered by coaches and they're specific to whatever topic that you're trying to grow. So there's like podcasters, there's women in business ones that I used to belong to, and there's money mindset ones. Depends on what the interest is. And you get to meet a ton of that kind of high level decision maker in those industries, in those corporations of whatever the industry is or whatever the interest is. Okay, so those are CEO groups, and I've spoken in front of a lot of them, I've gotten clients from them. They are a really rich resource for you to meet other corporate decision makers. Number 6 is stalk where they speak. Corporate decision makers are also working on their personal brand and on their own visibility and their company's visibility, and whether the topic is endemic to their own industry or to other industries in general, or they're trying to elevate their personal brand, as I said, they're going to be speaking somewhere. And that's part of their building their own career, or they've been asked to speak somewhere. So I found it so easy to meet corporate decision makers when I was following where they spoke and I was following those who did speak, because those who are out there, they're interested in visibility, they're interested in growth, they're interested in networking, they're interested in all the things that make it easy for you to meet them. And the way that I would meet them is I would send out a message before the event that I knew they were going to be speaking at and introduce myself and say how I could provide value around the topic of, pain for their industry, and say, I would love to meet you. I'm going to be there, just so you can put a name to a face. And whether they got the message or not before going to the event, and sometimes they did and other times they didn't, I would introduce myself, and it would make an impression when I said, I've left your message saying I'm going to be introducing myself. It's so wonderful to meet you. Did you get, that white paper or that tip video or that tip sheet that I left around the $1.4 billion problem that, you guys are facing within your industry? And then they're like taken aback and saying, no, I didn't. That sounds interesting. So then there's a discussion around, well, is that relevant to you guys? Or, is this something that's totally a miss for you? And then there's that discussion that continues. Oh, no, we're very much interested in that solution. And then I would ask, would it make sense for us to jump on a Zoom call or have a 15-minute sit down around how I think I can help and how I can, give you some solutions, whether you're ready to buy or not, so you can have it in your back pocket. So that's where it goes when I stop people who are speaking at events. So that's another place that I meet them. Number 7 is awards dinners. And I won an award way back in the day for an industry, or I've been to award dinners where I wasn't even really invited. I wasn't really even in any of the nominations, but I wanted to meet the people that were nominated, because guess who comes to the awards dinners are the people who are the winners and the nominees. So when you go to an awards dinner, it's all the higher level corporate decision makers that you could potentially meet at awards dinners. And guess what? It's a dinner. Guess what? It's really expensive. I'll never forget my first one. I had never rented a dress. I rented a designer dress with one arm, and it was freezing in the room. And I was so cold, like my one arm was so cold. So that's what I remember about that. But I remember buying a $500 ticket. These things were so out of range for me, out of realm for me. And I bought a $500 ticket to an awards dinner, and I rented I think it was $150 for the night, or for that, whatever, 4 hours, and rented that one-armed designer dress. And I went, and I knew nobody. It was such a high-level group, and I met so many prospects, and 2 of them became clients. And guess what? We were sitting at a dinner table, and they were like, well, what are you doing here? And I told them, I'm really interested in this group. I'm really interested in the people, and I wanted to meet you guys. And so that's how I meet corporate decision makers, high level. Last one that I'm going to give you is the executive roundtable, which I learned from my coach, Angelique Ruers, and I've used it. I still use it to this day. And it's literally inviting 8 to 10 high-level decision makers, like corporate decision makers, into a very private meeting. And the title of the session or the talk or the executive roundtable of discussion is around a very common and painful and expensive problem that they're actively trying to solve as you speak. And they're interested in a no selling, no fee, confidential, signed NDA, kind of peer sharing, very specific to that topic, either within their industry, or if they're a very competitive industry, it's with other industries, but at their same level. So it all has to be the same level of corporate decision maker. Otherwise, the sharing just isn't apples to apples, and it's not as valuable to them. And they also like the networking aspect of it. So I'm actually doing one with my corporate sponsor, Capital One, with Allison QB in December in a couple of weeks. I think it's in a month, and we're actually be doing it at the Capital One Summit, and we've invited, I think it was 20 of the CEOs and decision makers of my target that I want to meet, and then we're pulling them in for a shared conversation and wisdom around how to use your minority certification to actually get in front of corporations, and how did you close your sale, your last big whale? How did you land your last big whale? So that's the peer sharing, and then I share a little bit of how I help people do that, and then at the end I offer slots to speak to me, either right after or the following week. And that's how I get my biggest clients. That's how I meet corporate decision makers. So I hope this gives you an idea, and I hope this gives you hope that it's not that hard. They're everywhere. They have to be. Humans make money through other humans. So go out and stop thinking defeatist thoughts that corporate decision makers, especially the top level ones, are really hard to meet. They're out there, and it takes planning, and it takes structure, and it takes, it takes getting out there. So that's what I want to wish you, is good luck. And I will see you next week. Take care.